From Southern California, this is The Circle of Insight, a show about everything in psychology. Hear the latest in news and views on psychology. Our motto is simple: wherever there is psychology involved, we are there. And now, here's your host of The Circle of Insight, Carlos Vasquez.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. We have a fabulous show for you. Today we're going to be exploring amazing conversions with Pastor Johnny Turnipseed. He is the Vice President of Urban Ventures. You can see more about him at urbanventures.org. Welcome to the Circle, Pastor Turnipseed.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Part one was really fascinating. We got an inside look of gang life, life of a drug dealer, life of a pimp, a little bit of understanding of how it was to be a parent. I wanted to explore today a little bit more about your conversion process. So how did it begin? What started making your mind think, I'm in the wrong place here, I need to make a change?
Well, I had been through a lot of pain. I watched a lot of bad things happen to a lot of people. And I was sitting in jail, and my son was shot. And he was shot, and he didn't know that his leg was missing. And he was calling out for me, but I was in jail. So the police knew where I was, and they needed someone to tell this kid that his leg is gone, and he wanted me to tell him.
Wow.
We're going to bring the phone to my son, but then they had to take him to surgery. And when he woke up, he knew his leg was gone. Going into surgery, he thought his leg was still there, and his father, who he wanted to be there, was not there. The one person he wanted to be there in that room to protect him in his very vulnerable state, because being shot 13 times was very traumatic. And he thought he was going to die, and I thought he was too. And I just said to myself, you know what, if he lives, I'm done with this. If he dies, I don't know what would have happened if he'd have died. But I knew if he lived that I couldn't do this, because I'd already had one son that was killed by another guy that I never met at 3 years of age. So he lived, and that started my life. It didn't completely do everything I needed it to do, but it started my life. And shortly after that, I got indicted for 50 felonies.
How many?
And 50.
50 felonies.
Yeah, I won an Emmy for that, believe it or not, a television. It's a long story. You can look it up, Tom Lydon and John Turnipseed Emmy Award, and you would see the story of, it sits in my office. But this guy did a story about me. I became a school teacher, and I was trying to turn my life around, but I just hadn't turned my character around. So I stopped doing violent crimes, I stopped doing drugs, but I was still a criminal. And I started running gangs that just stole merchandise. And two gangs, one out of St. Louis, one out of Tennessee, worked with me to just swap goods, stolen goods from state to state.
This is while you're still teaching?
Yeah, I was a teacher, a college teacher. And there was a police investigation, a task force assigned to me. I didn't know it at the time. I guess I kept seeing white men standing outside my apartment. I should have knew something in a black neighborhood, but I didn't pay any attention to it. And they busted me and was getting ready to give me 40 years. And that's when all of it, I said, okay, I'm going to change all of the way. I don't care if I go to jail, because I'm sort of used to jail by now. I've been in prison 3 times. But 40 years, I didn't want to go in and do 40 years the same person that I was. And so I gave my life to Jesus.
How old were you at that time?
I was 40.
40.
Yes. I was 40 years old. And, my son had recovered, and he was, coming around, and he needed me. And when I got busted, and the people that I worked for didn't know I had 10 felonies and all that, didn't know I'd been in prison before, and I was a licensed teacher. That's a long story too. And I just got on my office floor, and this newspaper came to my job after the police had busted me, and I got out on bail because I had money. And they exposed me. And with that exposure, I just was ashamed for the first time in my life. I'd never been ashamed of anything I've ever done. But when I betrayed those kids, that I had students, in the other room. I had 20 students waiting for me to come teach the class. And here I was getting ready to go to jail and being exposed. And I gave my life to Jesus. I gave it completely.
At that point.
At that point. I was just tired, man. And, I said, I'm going to try. When you get at your end, you reach out for things just to see if there's a possibility. And I'd heard about this Jesus thing, never really tried it. Never had once tried it. I had sort of did a fake try where you say, okay, God, if you help me out of this, that's a fake try with your fingers crossed, But this time I was for real. I just, I didn't want to be who I was anymore.
I'm going to take you back a little bit and then bring you back here. First, I wanted to find out, how old was your son when he got shot in the leg? And did any time or any moment during that event, did you think in the back of your head for revenge?
Yeah, if he'd have died. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, at that time it was like I was on the, if he lives, I'll do this. If he dies, I'll do that. Because I knew who had shot him.
So that was that. So it was if he had passed away, then revenge probably would have been on the table at that point, and that would have changed your whole life again.
Yeah. Yeah, if he had passed away, and in the neighborhood I live in, nobody kills your son and walks around to talk about it. That's sort of like everything you are as a man hinges on how well you can protect those under you. And just like my daughters, I didn't allow people to hit my daughters. So if they had a boyfriend, if he had a tendency to hit, it wasn't at my daughter. He had to take that tendency somewhere else. And that was part of that was one thing about being a man that I really lived with. Like my little brothers, nobody picked on my little brothers. I didn't allow it.
Do they get involved in the same life?
My brothers, 4 of them were. 4 of them, I kept them away from gangs. A couple of them sneaked into them, but I tried to keep them out of that, Only 2 of my brothers went to the penitentiary.
How many did you have? Or do you have?
6.
6?
Oh, there's 6 of us. Yeah.
Let me bring
6.
it back forward now.
Mm-hmm.
So you were at the point where you're going to give your life to Jesus. Now, it sounded like in the first part that your mom was Christian.
Yes.
So that never appealed to you at all during your 40 years of life?
It didn't appeal because I used to pray to God to stop my dad from hitting her, and it never worked. It's like I pray, he come hit her. The prayer was this God thing. I don't know who they were praying to, but he didn't work for me. And I looked at my mom, and she continued to try to go to church and pray and all that stuff, and then she'd have black eyes the next day and stuff. And I'm like, really? You praying to this dude, and he can't even keep you from being hit? That didn't make sense to me.
So what would you say?
So
now we're gonna...
I stopped. Yeah, I left the church at a very young age and didn't come back until I was 40.
Let's start tackling that in the second part of this part 2. Let's start tackling some of those tough questions. That's a really tough question. I'm assuming you're probably not the only person in the gang life that has had that kind of experience. Mm-hmm. What would you tell somebody that's going through that right now?
I would tell them that God did answer my prayers. I just didn't realize it. I didn't have enough supportive people around me to help me and describe what was going on, that I trusted. I didn't have enough trusted individuals around me. So I tell people today, with your kids, only let positive people around them. Make sure they have a mentor, even if you're around them as a man. Have a mentor, a basketball coach, somebody that can talk to them in positive things other than you, because they need more than you. They need an army. And because God did answer my prayers. He sent a couple of preachers, believe it or not, but my mother wouldn't tell them the truth. I remember sitting in the room with one of them, and he was like, "Miss Turnipseed, is your husband hitting you?" "No." And we're sitting there like, no, like I'm wishing that God would just jump up and say, yeah, because this guy was willing to take my mother out of that. Twice that happened. So God did send angels, but my mother didn't grab their hand, you know, because maybe she was too afraid. And if, you know, I don't know. I've never asked her why. But I know that, you know, that God sent angels. So I tell people that God always answers prayers. You just have to keep your eyes open. And kids, when they're kids, they might not be able to figure out that there's angels in the room. That's why adults, we have to explain things to them. We have to tell them about things and protect them. You know, how can you keep a kid out of a gang if you can't protect him?
That's a good point.
Hi, welcome to Adelante. This is Adelante Recovery, and my name is Yvette Kuglin, and I'm part of the staff.
Adelante Recovery Center has helped people in dual diagnosis for 5 years. We accept most PPO insurances and provide luxury accommodations and 24-hour support. To speak with an admissions counselor, call 1-888-242-4450.
A lot of time we don't even know what's wrong with us, and sometimes we need to get away to figure that out. So if you want to go for a little retreat out in Corona Del Mar, which is a confidential location, we're here to help. So we're only a phone call away. Thank you.
Now, you're running a ministry right now, and I think your focus is a lot in helping individuals like this.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do in your ministry?
Well, you know, you can't just do I call it hocus pocus. You know, you can't walk out, tell a person, hey, you know, you got a bad life, change your life. And then they say, okay. And then they wait for this thing to happen. They can't get a job. They ain't got no place to stay. You know, that's hocus pocus. You know, what you have to do in people's lives is provide. You have to help them get a job. You have to help them find housing. You know, you have to be that intermediate that makes all these things happen. So if you can't, you have no business, you know, trying to convert these guys, you know. So I spend a lot of time with landlords and business owners and even judges and lawyers and stuff, so that I can have influence in places that they need influence. I talk to a lot of probation officers. You got to clear out some of the dirt in their path in order for them to walk, you know, in the right way, man, you know, because it's a tough road back. You know, here you are, 30 years old, never had a job with 2 felonies. Don't nobody want to hire you, you know, unless you have somebody speaking for you. And with a lot of our guys, you know, they came from making a lot of money, they don't want to be a dishwasher, you know. And you tell them you got to go back to school, but the PO is telling them get a job now. You know, you got to get a job now. So what do? They get fake jobs. You know, all kinds of obstacles are out there for them. And a fake job is you get somebody that owns a fake business to say that you work for them. Sooner or later, you go to jail. You go back to jail. So, you know, you have to have real, true help for these guys. You really have to clear out some brush for them. You have to clear a path for them to walk in. So we have our own job center, our own workforce center. We don't trust just the world to treat these guys like they should be treated and stuff. So we probably help 200 guys a year get jobs. We help with landlords. We clear the brush out. Then you can do the hocus pocus. You can, you know, turn your life around. You know, it works. Jesus doesn't work. You can't. Jesus even fed people before he tried to minister to them, because he didn't want people sitting in the audience starving and him trying to tell them how good he was, you know. So he would do things with people. He made a blind man see, you know, he saved a prostitute from being stoned to death. Those are miracles. So the prostitute and the blind man knew who he was because he did something for them, you know. So if Jesus had to use tools to get people to believe in him, we have to use them also. And our tools are jobs and housing. It's really that simple, you know, to get a guy on that path to where he is safe and feeling good enough about himself to believe in this God that you put on such a high pedestal.
So So we're focused first on the tools that you think helps them identify this is coming from somebody who works for Christ in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
That gets them to identify who Jesus is, what Christianity is about, and then, as you say, hocus pocus comes into the picture.
Well, yeah, maybe hocus pocus. The hocus pocus part was really about when we just tell people to change their life, you know, and magic is supposed to happen, and it doesn't happen, you know. When I changed my life, it really happened, you know. I can't explain it, but there was really a feeling of that I was going to be all right, and with hope, anything is possible. And these guys have no hope. And so when you help them, you know, some of those small miracles you provide for people, you know, I gave a guy one time a bus pass, man, changed his whole life. You know, a bus pass. You know, it's not, it was like a $10 one too. It wasn't one of those high-powered $100 ones that you could ride for a month. But it helped him in that first week, a bus pass, and gave him a couple of packs of lunch meat and some bread. And this dude went and got his first job, and now he's doing really well. It's 10 years ago that I did that. And I see him every once in a while. He just thanks me, you know. He just thanks me. He goes to church. He's fathering his kids, you know. All I did was help the man, just a little bit. It didn't cost me hardly anything, you know, probably $15. You know, and I'm not saying that you have to just be a piggy bank for these guys, but you got to help them, man. You know, people didn't help me. People helped me. People helped me. When I came to Jesus, people helped me, man. People opened doors for me and kept them open. You know, even to this day, people still help me. You know, when I need, yeah. You know, every once in a while I'll try to do something. I get barriers. I'll try to go into prison to speak, and a warden will speak up for me. You know, yeah, I have. You know, the sheriff in Minneapolis helps me go into the juvenile center and all of them things, because I got a record. You know, so I get blocked from a lot of things. But I got people that just open doors for me. I get miracles performed for me through people every day.
And how does your ministry get the funds to do the job that it needs to do?
Well, right now I'm covered 80% by a federal government grant. You know, I probably get my budget is probably $1 million. It is $1 million, $1,200,000. I know that number very well because I have to raise it every year. So I get help by the federal government, but there's a lot of people that just love the work that we do. That will cover the other 20%.
And that's at urbanventures.org.
Urbanventures.org. So it's not a hard stretch for people to believe in fathering.
And the book sales and the movie sales, those are also helping the cause?
Yes, book sales, movie sales help the cause, help with recognition, helps me get indoors, you know. Amazing things happen.
I have one final question. It's truly an amazing story, by the way, Pastor. One final question. Do you have any opinion or insight on what happened down there in Ferguson?
Yeah, I was talking to a young kid today about that. And, you know, this kid, one of the things that I try to tell kids, you want to be as valuable as to the world as possible. So the less things that are negative in your life, the better for you. Because if something happens to you, the first thing you're going to go after is the negatives in your life, okay? To decide whether or not you were worth protesting over. So they started immediately painting this kid as all these negatives. Oh, he's this big, aggressive kid that was doing all this. So it took away from his life. It took away from the fact that he was a human being, you know, period. And he didn't deserve to die. And so then you got a police officer that seemingly had, he's doing what police have been doing since the beginning of time in the United States, shooting people when they got ready to. You know, it's like in my community, we've seen so many people be shot by the police. We see it as this is the same beast that was in Alabama in 1954. You know, it may or may not be true, but if police keep aggressively dealing with black men like they do, what else are we to believe? You know, so we have a hard time believing that it wasn't intentional. So as far as the riots and things, When people protest without a plan, without a positive outcome plan, there's violence is the only option when the plan fails, because there is none. It's like when protesters, there's two types of people in protests, and there's protesters and injustice collectors. And the injustice collectors are just waiting for everything to go bad so they can tear up everything. The protesters are hoping that something good happens. But if they don't have a plan, like Martin Luther King had a plan, he actually had outcomes that he wanted to achieve, and he would tell the people, this is how you can achieve these outcomes, and we're going to protest until you do. Today, we're just protesting and waiting for something to happen. So only bad things are going to happen out of these protests until somebody says, this is the plan, and the rest of the protesters are willing to follow one voice. There's too many voices out there. So nothing good is going to come out of the protests.
And events like this, it seems to make it more difficult for organizations like yours to get their message across to these individuals. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. What I try to tell young African American men, if we want to fight injustice and prejudice, let's get our act together. Let's be the leaders and positive male figures in our children's lives and stuff. Then we can tackle the injustice. We can tackle it because the world will help us. You know, let's take the negatives out of our life. Let's take the gangs out of our life. Let's take the drug dealings out of our life. Let's take the negatives associated with being a black man in America away from us. Then the world will have to pay attention to our plight. The world will back us. The world will be jumping in to help us, just like they did with Martin Luther King. You know, all of his people were from all over the world, black, white, Jewish, Spanish, you name it, because black men were taking care of their families. Black men were not hanging out in gangs and stuff. So they were a very positive force to fight for. And we have to become that again. So black men, I call myself John the Black Man on a radio show. I want black men to just do the best they can to take care of their families and create a positive force in this world so we can get all of this injustice off of our backs.
That's fantastic.
That's a long answer.
Fantastic insight, Pastor Turnipseed. Thank you so much again for joining us. Thank you, everybody. If you want to learn more about Pastor Turnipseed, you want to get involved, you want to contribute to the organization, you can find it at urbanventures.org. Also, I would urge you to get his book, Bloodline. It's a fantastic book. Once again, thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Remember, our motto is simple. Wherever there's psychology involved, we are there. And hopefully we'll have Pastor Turnipseed come back for our next series coming up next year on racism. This is still alive in America. We'll talk to you soon next time, everyone. And now we have a special feature at the end of our shows, a singer or talent of the month. This month in March, we have Rebecca Jade. And at the end of the show, listen to Further Again with Rebecca Jade.